Hey guys, welcome into the Eye on College Basketball YouTube channel. David Cobb here alongside 24/7 Sports Director of Scouting, Adam Finklestein, and we are going to continue on with a series that Kyle and Adam started already, breaking down the NBA draft by position groups. Adam, I guess you just thoroughly defeated Kyle, so now I'm here to stand in and spar with you today.
Yeah, I don't know about that. I don't know. A strong jaw doesn't go down easy.
That's right. He's got a very strong jaw, and I don't think I have any such defining features. Nonetheless, I'm excited to break down some prospects with you today. I'm working on a mock draft kind of as we speak, was kind of putting the finishing touches on it before we hopped on here for this chat. It's really, I mean, it's getting close. This video will be watched in literally just the days leading up to the draft. So it's getting real at this point. And the position group we're going to talk about today, it's a unique one in the NBA in these times. It's the center position. And I think let's just go ahead and talk. I think real quick, Adam, I think we're in uniform agreement. Chet Holmgren is he is the top player in this class who most people would classify as a 5. And do you even really consider Chet Holmgren as a 5, having scouted him and watched him now for a few years?
Yeah, I do. And I think you're absolutely right. It's not especially close, depending on who you have number 2 on your board. It's a ways away from Chet. Obviously, the biggest concern about Chet is he's got to bulk up and get stronger. But he is a guy who, even as a high school sophomore, when he was incredibly lean, had no fear, didn't hesitate to play through contact. So it was never, I've said this from day one, he was always skinny, but he was never soft. So yeah, he's without question going to have to build up his body, but I think he shows a willingness to play through contact whenever he is physically able to. So he's a center in my book, a big man in my book, however you want to call it. Obviously, he's a floor spacing 5 because he can shoot the ball. I think his skill set is more versatile than some people are giving him credit for. I think he can start the break in transition. I think he's going to be able to play out of DHOs and different kinds of offensive action because he's got good hands, touch. He can pass and handle the ball. I think the thing that people this year really started to notice was how quick off his feet he was as a finisher. His finishing metrics were off the charts. If there was an area this year that concerned me, I actually thought he was a little bit better laterally in high school. And that's really why I do say he's a 5 or a big, whatever you want to call it, and not a 4. But yeah, I think that, he's a little off balance at times this year. He can get out there and kind of, he can show on pick and roll. If he has to switch, he can do it reasonably well, but not well enough where you're talking about him like we're talking about Jabari on the defensive end. So yeah, I do think he's a 5. He's the best overall prospect, not just center, but overall prospect on my board, even though Jabari is now expected to go number 1, at least according to Vegas. So, but yeah, that's pretty much my rundown of Chet.
Yeah, for sure. He's different than every other center that we're going to discuss on this show because of the versatility, the way he can handle the ball, get out and run the break. He's shown more 3-point shooting prowess than pretty much any center in this draft class. My concerns are similar to yours. A couple of guys that come to mind when I think about who Chet Holmgren might be in the NBA: Jaren Jackson Jr., Kristaps Porzingis. Yeah, Jaren shoots the ball a lot. And Porzingis, just from a size perspective, kind of fills that role as well. And the deal with those two guys is, before age 25, both have undergone fairly serious knee injuries that have caused them to miss significant chunks of entire seasons almost. And so, that's just something that whoever takes Chet Holmgren is going to have to deal with that possibility, because it's not just the fact that he's skinny, it's lanky. It's 7-foot bodies I don't necessarily think are made to withstand the rigors of an 82-game NBA season year in and year out. And so I just think that guys who are built like that, who are capable athletically of doing the things he can do, that's just a lot of wear and tear on somebody, of that size. So that's Chet Holmgren. We are in uniform agreement. He is the top 5 in this draft class, even if he maybe isn't a center in the eyes of everyone out there. So now that we've got that out of the way, we've talked Chet. we can get into a reverse countdown, perhaps, of our top 5 centers in the draft. And I'll let you go first, Adam. We'll go with your number 5 center in this class. Who are you rocking with in that spot?
So I've got Jalen Williams out of Arkansas. I admittedly do not expect him to be a first-round pick. In full disclosure, I should say, I thought he should have gone back to Arkansas. I thought that the center spot was really only the only notable hole in that lineup with what Muss brought in. And I just thought it was a seamless fit. As it stands now, he's going to probably be a second-round pick. But I do think he has a chance to earn his spot and to make a roster. The other thing we should say is that, the center position is almost becoming outdated gradually. I don't think it's ever going to go away. But, 15, 20 years ago, someone like Jalen Williams would have been a no-brainer first-round pick. And now it's just, geez, how well does that prototype fit the modern NBA? And I think that has a lot to do with where players like Williams and others are slotted right now, because the game has changed and the way that the prototypical big men are utilized has changed. So Williams is a guy to me that can impact the game without having to play a big role offensively. He's a defensive presence for sure. He's a rebounder, someone who's willing to do all the dirty work. I think he's got a little bit of an upside offensively as a passer, but in a role player capacity, he showed some glimpses of that at the combine that were encouraging. But again, I think this is a guy that in the second round, someone says, you know what, maybe for very small money, he can compete for a backup role, and it'll be a good fit financially within the constraints of, a team that's trying to, whether it's avoid the luxury tax or whatever. But I just think when you've got somebody who can impact the game defensively and who can pass a little bit, you got a chance at his size to stick in the league.
I'll tell you the reason why Jalen Williams is going to the NBA. He caught wind of that rule change where you could be assessed a technical foul for flopping in college basketball next year. And he was like, yo, I'm out of here. I can't rock with this anymore.
That's fair. Who do you have on your board? Because you got a real sleeper on your board.
Yeah. Appreciate you setting me up like that. That's what a good point guard does.
Throw in the alley.
Yeah. I'm going to dunk on y'all here with Orlando Robinson out of Fresno State. And just going to brag for a second here and say back in January, we did a dribble handoff feature on CBSSports.com, most underrated stars in college basketball. And I went with Orlando Robinson because this is a 7-footer who has got a really smooth perimeter game. He can shoot it from the outside, and he's pretty good handling the ball too. And part of the reason for that is because as a prospect, he was, only like 6'9", more of a 3 or a 4, but then over time kept growing and became a star in college basketball. And so he went through the G League combine last year and apparently registered the lowest vertical of anybody at the G League combine. And therefore, I think was kind of slept on due to the lack of athleticism. But my thing is with a 7-footer, how important is the vertical leap anyway? Because you're already 7 feet tall. You've already got a really nice wingspan. So Orlando Robinson is not going to register at the top of the charts in terms of rim protection in this center class. But if you pull up his highlight tape, you'll see what I'm talking about with his offensive game. And so I think in some ways, how Banchero was a little bit smaller for a while and developed some good ball skills and whatnot. I kind of feel the same way about Orlando Robinson. Those smaller guys, maybe weren't always pegged as the bigs long-term and therefore learned how to handle the ball a little bit more. And so I think Orlando Robinson checks that box for me.
All right. I like it. Taking a flyer. If it's going to hit, it's going to hit big.
Yeah, for sure. So we'll see how that goes. But again, the fact that, we're talking about guys who maybe not even first round picks here, it does illustrate, sort of the status of the center position in the NBA. So moving on, I guess we'll get into number 4. Who do you have at number 4?
Well, this is the thing that upsets me is that I thought I had some flyers of my own here on the center board, but you and I are in agreement the rest of the way here. So I like Christian Koloko. I do think he is arguably outside of Chet, probably the best rim protector in the class. I shouldn't say that, but he's got a chance to be the best rim protector in the class. I'll say it that way. His size is massive. As we're watching the NBA Finals right now, somebody like Golden State picking at the end of the first round, I'm thinking to myself, telling me they couldn't use a guy that size who can put a lid on the rim every now and then, a few possessions. So I do think that even though the big man is not as coveted in today's NBA, someone who doesn't need a whole lot of touches, who can be a lob threat, a rim protector, and is by all accounts just beloved by everyone around him. So if you're taking a guy like that who can fit that role, you have to make sure he's a low maintenance personality, because the reality is he's not going to get a whole lot of touches. You're not going to, I mean, he had a shooting drill at the combine where he made some threes and everybody was like, oh, is he a floor spacer? Well, if he turns out to be one, sign me up as one of the people who didn't see it coming, because I don't know that that's in his future. But even if it's not, I think that his personality being what it is, he's going to be a role player, a finisher, a rim protector, and you've got to have somebody who's willing to do that with maximum effort and not complain about, all the other S's, salary, starts, shots, and stuff like that. And I think Christian Koloko is that, and I think he can help a competitive NBA team.
Martin, the reunion. Action.
This one's for you, Tommy.
A reunion to remember.
This show was and still is big for the culture.
Martin the Reunion, now streaming on BET+.
Yeah, I'm with you on Koloko. 0 for 5 from three-point range over his 3-year career at Arizona. So, yes, it would certainly be a new wrinkle to his game if he were to step out and start shooting threes. One thing that stands out to me about this Arizona class, just to bring it back to college basketball for a second, if Koloko were to go in the first round, we're talking about a decent chance that Tommy Lloyd may have inherited a program that produced 3 first-round draft picks the following year, and none of those guys would have been guys that he brought in. So, you talk about Dalen Terry, who's getting some first-round love right now. You talk about Christian Koloko potentially as a fringe first-round guy. And then I think most people agree, Ben Mathurin will be a first-round pick. So in theory, at least, Tommy Lloyd may have inherited an Arizona roster from Sean Miller that had 3 first-round picks on it. And that I think very much artificially inflates the expectation for other first-year coaches, because most first-year coaches do not walk into a situation where they have 3 first-round draft picks on the roster.
I do think so. I think that's a really good point that people aren't talking about enough. And there's 2 sides to it. It's one, it's like, hey, Sean Miller had more talent in the cupboard than people thought when he left. But it's also, hey, Tommy Lloyd did a really good job with these guys, because when he took over, with the exception of Mathurin, these other prospects weren't expected to be in this spot right now. So I think you have to credit both Miller and Lloyd for what they've done here. And along those lines, just a quick plug. Benedict Mathurin and Dalen Terry are 2 guys that I think are really climbing up boards. I just did a feature on 24/7 Sports yesterday about Mathurin. I think he could go as high as 6 right now if things pan out the way it's going. And Terry, to me, has a chance to be a top 20 guy. So I know we're doing 5s. I'm getting off on a little bit of a tangent here, but your point about Arizona is a good one.
Yeah, it's amazing. So moving on.
You go next. Okay. Next.
Yeah. All right. So my number 3 center in this class is going to be Walker Kessler. So
number 3, like non-Chet center.
Non-Chet center, yeah. Walker Kessler, who, by the way, did actually show a little bit of ability to step out and shoot the 3 for Auburn this year. Walker Kessler's career arc is fascinating to me, because he started out as a highly regarded prospect at North Carolina, but he was stuck behind Baycott and Sharp. And Garrison Brooks was on that North Carolina team. So just a really deep front court at UNC the year that Walker Kessler was there. However, later in the year, when he finally did get to play during Roy Williams' last season, he really flashed. And so I was super high on him in my portal rankings when he announced that he was going to transfer, which a lot of people think had a lot to do with Roy's timing on his retirement, just kind of one of those last nail in the coffin sort of things. Having a guy like that transfer out. He goes to Auburn and was awesome, just awesome as a shot blocker, offensively really good at the rim, and then showed the ability to, maybe over the long term become a 3-point shooter. So I think there's going to be questions about the defensive versatility. Can he be exploited in pick and roll situations? Those seem like the issues with Walker Kessler, but the rim protection, awesome. Finishing at the rim, awesome. And the long-term projections to maybe hit some outside shots, I think put him just very narrowly ahead of Christian Koloko for me.
Yeah, no, I like Kessler as well. In fact, the most recent intel is really encouraging about him. Having seen him in high school, I do totally agree with you. I think he has long-term floor spacing potential. I think he may be able to make threes down the road. The thing in North Carolina was, I mean, quite honestly, it was just a horrible fit. I mean, Roy Williams was still kind of committed to playing two big men in a little bit of an outdated style. You kind of saw Hubert Davis, even at his opening press conference, talk about that in the most respectful way possible, of just saying like, hey, we're going to play 4 around 1 now. And Kessler wasn't going to fit next to Baycott or Sharp. I mean, there's just no space. So he wasn't going to look good at North Carolina, even when he did get on the floor. Now at Auburn, he showed you what he can do. I think the concerns about his mobility defensively are completely justified. He's only going to be a drop coverage pick and roll defender right now. But the thing that he is, in addition to a rebounder and a rim protector, he's a master of verticality. So this guy really understands how to make himself just massive inside the lane. So while he's not like a super bouncy vertical athlete, he takes up so much space, as much vertically as laterally. He just makes himself huge, and he's a constant deterrent. So he changes a lot more shots around the rim than he blocks. And I do think he's got a chance to go higher in this draft than I think a lot of people have him projected right now.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm a big Walker Kessler proponent. I think he's going to be a good player at the next level. So that brings us to our number 2 non-Chet center now. I'll kick it to you for
3
this
overall, 2 non-Chet. Yeah, so this is the place where I thought I was taking a little bit of a flyer, because there's 2 guys left on the board basically. It's Mark Williams and it's Jalen Duren. And most people have Jalen Duren as the second best center in this draft behind Chet. I do not. I think it's Mark. I have Mark Williams as the second best center. So going in reverse order, we can talk about Jalen. Jalen is just a monster physically. I mean, he looks like a 6'10" version of Superman. I mean, he's absolutely, just completely ripped physically. He's exceptionally long. He's an explosive vertical athlete who's just going to rip the rim down at every possible opportunity. My issue with Jalen is the motor, and it's been that since he was an underclassman at Roman Catholic High School in Philadelphia. This is a prospect and a player that picks and chooses when he wants to play as hard as he can. It does not happen every day. It was that way at Roman Catholic. It was that way at Montverde Academy, and it was that way at Memphis. His physical tools are absolutely elite. I also think he's got more potential skill than most people realize. Like when he was an underclassman, I remember watching him at USA Basketball just doing some shooting drills, and you'd say to yourself, geez, this guy's going to be able to stretch the floor one day, or this guy's going to be able to make a pass. But we haven't seen the progression of his skill set, and to me, that's another indication, or at least a thread that you want to pull to say, gee, how hard are you working on your game? If we're looking at you and saying you don't play as hard as you should in between the lines, how hard are you working to improve your game and develop what may be some natural potential in those skills areas? So that's why he's 3 on my board, just because I question the motor. But let's just be clear about something. His floor is very, very high because his physicality, his athleticism, his power, that's all going to translate. He's got a very defined role in the NBA right away. So I do think he's going to have a long NBA career. I just don't think it's going to be quite what we have hoped over the course of the last 2 or 3 years.
Yeah, as a Memphian who watches a fair amount of Memphis basketball, the thing that sticks out to me about Jalen Duren is how little he did offensively outside of the dunker spot for the Tigers this past season. So the ball skills just really aren't there for a player that some people are comparing to Bam Adebayo, and maybe a player who could work out of the high post quite a bit. I don't know that I see that at this point with Jalen Duren. And of course he could develop it, but the concerns that you speak to are the appetite to do so. And so, let's hope with this guy, he gets into an NBA system, NBA franchise, just gets to go to work and gets that sort of a coaching and attention he needs to develop his game. But yeah, I'm with you. And I think we're probably exceptions for the most part in having Mark Williams ahead of Jalen Duren. And I think I may be a little bit influenced by having, really dug into Duke late in the season when they made their NCAA tournament run. And obviously Mark Williams was phenomenal down the stretch for Duke. I do wonder to what extent that is, unduly influencing my opinion of Mark Williams, because there were times early in the season where he wasn't doing much for Duke, and later in the season he became a star. So he's my number one. I think he's just as reasonable of a center as you can have in the NBA today without shooting 3-pointers. Like if you want somebody to like bruise with Joel Embiid or like take Jonas Valanciunas to task on the block, like Mark Williams is that guy. Like he is that big, and he can handle those types of assignments. And those guys are becoming more and more extinct, but there is a role, I think, for somebody who can do it as well as Mark Williams does.
Yeah, I think here's the thing with Mark. The things that are obvious: elite rim protector, elite finisher, elite length, elite size, elite standing reach, all that stuff, undeniable. Equally undeniable, he's got to keep building up his body, especially his lower body. So I'm a little less confident that you are that he can come in and hold his ground against those true low post guys from day one before he builds up his lower body. Where I am probably more confident, though, is in his ability to develop beyond more than just the role we saw him at Duke. This is an interesting trend that I've heard about, not just with Williams, but with some other guys, AJ Griffin in particular, Trevor Keels to a certain extent, but players at Duke and the NBA saying, okay, we know what they were able to do relative to their role at Duke, but what else might they be able to do in the future that they were not currently able or allowed to show this year? And Mark Williams shot over 72% from the free throw line. He did so with a very soft touch. I think, we talked about Walker Kessler having shooting potential. Mark Williams has got shooting potential. And that to me is the crux of this eval. If you think that Mark Williams is solely the player we saw at Duke, you're going to have him maybe, 12 to 22, somewhere like that. If you think he's a guy that can do what we saw at Duke and maybe stretch the floor as well, now he's in the lottery conversation, which is where he is in my book, because I do believe in his shooting potential, and I do believe in the upward trajectory of Mark Williams' game.
Good stuff, Adam. There you have it. That's our top 5 centers for this NBA draft class, not including, of course, Chet Holmgren, who we did discuss in detail earlier in this episode. So curious, anything else about this position group that sticks out to you? Actually, you know what? I have a hypothetical for you. This is sort of strange, but if Jalen Duren had stayed in the class of 2023 as a prospect, or I guess in the class of 2022, because he reclassed at the last minute and joined Memphis, where in your mind would he have ranked with some of these guys who we are going to see in college basketball next year? Filipowski, Lively, where would Jalen Duren have finished on your board, in alignment with those guys who we're going to see in the college game?
Yeah, he would have had a chance to be number one. But I think a lot of that has to do with what you're projecting for, because while the center position may be the least important one in the NBA, you could make the argument that it's the most important one in college basketball. Think about the players who are going back to college basketball next year. Baycott, Hunter Dickinson, Oscar Tshiebwe. You've got all of these guys who in years past, I know NIL was a factor, but in years past would have probably left for the NBA saying there's nothing more I can prove there. But now you've got these huge bangers that are going to be some of the most notable players in college basketball. Those guys are going to be really, really important. Oscar Tshiebwe is going to be huge for Kentucky. We're talking about the returning National Player of the Year. Same thing with Baycott. He almost led North Carolina to a national championship last year. So Jalen Duren is, he's similar in many ways to those types of players. So if you're projecting him to come back to college next year, you're saying, geez, if he can pick the motor up a little bit, he could be the most dominant player in college basketball. But I think really what we're speaking to is the fact that the throwback style center is a much better fit for college basketball right now than it is for the NBA game.
Absolutely. Gary Parrish is going to have an article on that very topic coming up soon. The names you mentioned, tremendously impactful on college basketball. They're coming back for another year because that market in the NIL era is really attractive for guys like that who may not be first round NBA draft picks. They can come back to college, make some money, continue to build out their games. I have a little bit of an issue, though. I think college basketball coaches don't do a great job of adding to the skill sets of their centers. I think they get a little selfish with, trying to box guys into the roles they need them to play in the college game. One that comes to mind is Trace Jackson Davis.
You took the words right out of my mouth. Absolutely.
Ever add a 3-point shot, man, you would be awesome. And to be clear, he is awesome at the college game. I think Mike Woodson's doing a phenomenal job. Just, man, if Trace Jackson Davis ever added the outside shot, he would be a first-round pick, I would say.
Yeah, but would he be going back to Indiana for a third year?
Exactly. So these guys,
that's and which one is better for Indiana? I mean, it's all these kinds of things that people have to debate about. But yeah, and then you've got guys like Kofi Cockburn who we didn't talk about in our top 5, who's not going to be a first-round pick, who, had he elected to go back to college basketball, might have been the most dominant player in the country last year. So it all, as you said, GP's got that article coming out. I think the other factor that we're not talking about, and I'm sure he will dig into, is the way the college game is being officiated, or at least the way it was last year, because freedom of movement and all that stuff we were talking about, right before the pandemic, that all went away last year. And because it went away and it was a more physical game than we've seen in a long, long time, that makes guys like these huge centers all the more valuable. So a lot of it depends on the way the game's going to be officiated. A lot of it depends on NIL, but I think the officiating was the other very important variable that we're not talking about right now.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think that does it for us today on the Eye on College Basketball YouTube channel. Appreciate you joining us as we broke down the top centers in the class, including Chet Holmgren. Hopefully we don't get dinged for the fact that I had the U.S. Open on in the background there. Might have been a copyright deal, but, you can only see half the screen, and I turned it off. So hopefully we're all good there. But, man, Adam, thank you for joining us. And, I guess we'll catch you guys again soon.
Yeah, 1 week from draft night. Let's do it.
All right.